welcome back to an abbreviated version of Inside the Game with CNHI Sports. I'm George Bremer of CNHI Sports Indiana, and let's get started by heading out to Big Ten country, checking in with Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana and Elton Hayes of CNHI Sports Pennsylvania. All right, now we'll check in with Kevin Brockway and Elton Hayes and get some updates on the wild Big Ten right now. I guess one good place to start for the second straight week, the Big Ten has to cancel a game due to COVID concerns. It's Wisconsin again. Their battle with Purdue, not going to happen on Saturday as scheduled. Guys, what does this mean for the Badgers, and what does it mean for the West Division race? It seems like things are getting shook up quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think the most immediate concern, if you're a fan of the Big Ten West or you're a fan of Wisconsin, is what this does for its playoff chances. I know that teams have to play 6 games to be considered, and with the Big Ten only playing 9 games, Wisconsin missing out on 2 of those right now, we're getting into real dicey territory. And, you know, Wisconsin is a legitimate team. I believe they were ranked number 9th in the country before the outbreak among the team. So, that's something really to follow. I was looking at it earlier, and I see that they're up to 27 cases now, within that team. So they could be wiped out for a while, definitely for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and if, they do come back the following week and play, it'll be interesting to see if Graham Mertz plays, because without him, I don't think they have a shot of really – running the table. They'd be down to their third-string quarterback. It doesn't look like Jack Cohn is coming back anytime soon either. But regardless, like you said, there is going to be an impact of sharpness and, how competitive they're going to be. Theoretically, could they go 7-0? Yeah, but then, if you're playing in the Big Ten title team, you're probably running into Ohio State anyway. So I think it's just going to be a really tough road for Wisconsin going forward if and when they come back. But, first things first, they have to get control of this virus.
Like you said, Kevin, Graham Mertz, that's a really good point. Without having him, he's the motor to that offense. And as they say, Jonathan Taylor ain't walking through that door. So there's no Jonathan Taylor or run game to rely on. So that would be a big, big loss for the Badgers.
Yeah, I've done my share of Zooms with Jonathan Taylor this year, and he's definitely not going back to Wisconsin. I have sort of related to that same idea, does Wisconsin's troubles open up things in that West for a couple of surprise unbeaten teams? Northwestern won the division a couple years ago. They're off to 2-0. They look really good behind Peyton Ramsey, the transfer quarterback from IU. And then Purdue, who's 2-0. And I know the Illinois game has some caveats because they've had their own problems with COVID, but they have not yet put Rondale Moore on the field, and he might be the best player in the conference. What do we make of that Wild West, and what do we make of Northwestern and Purdue at this point in the season?
I think when you're talking about the best player in the conference might be David Bell, right? The current Purdue wide receiver, and you wonder when David Bell and Rondale Moore are finally together, if that materializes during the course of the season, the chemistry between that. But Aiden O'Connell, the quarterback, seems to be playing really steady for him right now. He's getting the balls where they need to go to. And Bob Diaco has done a pretty good job with that defense at Purdue, too. Last year they were a complete sieve. This year they're at least holding their own. They're playing a little better until the fourth quarter. And as far as Northwestern is concerned, Peyton Ramsey has really stabilized that position. You remember last year, Northwestern had all kinds of problems at the quarterback spot with Hunter Johnson and Aiden Smith. No consistency at that position at all. And Peyton Ramsey's really stabilized it. And they play very good defense over there as well.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Northwestern. That's the team that I was very disappointed in last year. Like you said, George, coming off of the division win the year before. Pat Fitzgerald is a really good coach. I know Patty Fisher at linebacker there is just one of the best in the conference, and they finally seem to have a competent quarterback and someone Kevin knows really well, and Peyton Ramsey. So I'm really intrigued by what Northwestern's doing, and see if they can keep up that momentum and take advantage of Wisconsin kind of falling off there due to its COVID issues.
The other surprise 2-0 team in the league, obviously Indiana, up to number 13 in the country this week, the highest they've been since 1987. The Hoosiers have a big home game against a Michigan team that suddenly looks a little desperate, needs a win very badly. Kevin, what do you make of this matchup? I know you're down there in Bloomington. How does this shape up? It seems like a kind of a different game than IU's played in a few decades.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing to think that Indiana hasn't beaten Michigan since 1987, and I'm sure that's back in the days when stonewashed jeans and members only jackets were in fashion. I know I had a pair myself when I was a teenager back in that day. But it is pretty amazing when you look at it now. And I watched Jim Harbaugh's press conference too on their website, and Jim Wozowski, the really talented, obviously national college football writer for ESPN, just flat out asked him, "Hey, these last 5.5 years, you were brought here. You didn't like to be termed the savior, but you look at Harbaugh's tenure at Michigan. He has not necessarily gotten that program to the heights that they were certainly hoping. Obviously 0-5 against Ohio State, and then last week a really disappointing home loss against the Michigan State team that had lost to Rutgers the week before. So I think a little pressure on Harbaugh here, to deliver and to get this team back in contention in the Eastern Division. I mean, if they lose against Indiana, that's 2 losses, and you're pretty much out of the race in a short season. So definitely a sense of desperation. And I think for Indiana, a team that's really confident right now, playing very well. They know they're not playing even their best football yet, but they're getting a lot of takeaways. The kicker, Charles Campbell's been really good. They're 11-11 in the red zone because they're converting points down there, either touchdowns or field goals. And, Michael Penix is staying healthy and, making plays with his arm and his legs too.
At the other end of the spectrum is Penn State, obviously, off to an 0-2 start. But there were some pluses for the Nittany Lions on Saturday, in particular, Johan Dotson starting to really emerge as a number one receiver, made some outstanding plays late in that game against the Buckeyes. Elton, what's the feeling in State College right now?
People are they're nervous. They're nervous. Like you said, they're 0-2 right now for the first time since 2012, the first time in James Franklin's 7-year tenure. And, losing to Ohio State can be forgiven. But moving forward, you look at Penn State's schedule. I know they have Maryland coming to town this week. Then they travel to Nebraska, have Iowa, Michigan State. Now, these are winnable games. So I think they're kind of on the edge right now. They're waiting to see what happens. But I think next week they're getting this week rather, they're getting a Maryland team that looked really good. And it's a win against Minnesota, a team that won 11 games last year. So, I was at that game on Saturday. I was kind of disappointed in the lack of a run game by Penn State. This is an offensive line that's been here for a while. That a lot of players in the offseason talked about it being one of its strengths. Devin Ford, who's filling in for Noah Kane, who was filling in for Journey Brown, only gained 36 yards rushing on 8 carries. Last week, Sean Clifford, the quarterback, had a team-high 18 carries. So, they're going to have to establish some kind of run game to be competitive moving forward. I understand you lose a guy like Journey Brown and Noah Kane. It really hits you. But, why running back depth was this team's strong point. It's something that everyone talked about how deep this room is. I think people want to see some of the yields on those returns right now. So if Penn State goes 0-3 at Maryland, then I think there's going to be some unrest here in the Commonwealth.
One more thing I wanted to hit on before we let you guys go. Nebraska, obviously very vocal during the time the Big Ten was shut down, wanting to get back out there. Some of the players sued the conference. Been a very contentious kind of relationship. They got caught up in the Wisconsin COVID situation. Their game was canceled last week. They tried to schedule another game last second with Chattanooga. The Big Ten didn't let it go through. There were some hurt feelings on both sides. How tense is this relationship right now between the Big Ten and the Cornhuskers?
I'll put it this way. And I know I'm not the only one. Nebraska's getting on my nerves. It's like Nebraska, what do you really have to throw around? They have not been competitive since they've joined the Big Ten. This is not the Nebraska of old with Tommy Frazier, the Black Shirts defense. They've been a middling program. And for them to kind of insert themselves as being some type of power and challenging the conference, challenging the leadership. It's just in poor taste from the administration all the way down. So I know a lot of Nebraska fans were complaining when they got that schedule at the beginning of the season. They complained that it was too difficult for them. But my thing is, Nebraska, just be happy you're playing right now. This is a pandemic, and just take what you can get at this point.
Yeah, they want to get better, obviously, and they want that opportunity, and they've got a good one coming up against Northwestern here. If they can win that game, they can get in the race a little bit. And they did have the benefit of, maybe a bye week, if you look at it that way, to kind of practice and work on some things and get better. And maybe it'll work to their benefit down the road. So instead of griping, this could be a good thing, because they could be a team that might be more fresh down the stretch, not having to play the grind of 9 games in 9 weeks. And I think that's what this Wisconsin situation does, is it messes with the integrity of the schedule a little bit, and I think that's something that, the Big Ten, obviously in hindsight with the rapid testing, hasn't really worked out as well as they'd hope in terms of, being quote unquote the safest conference. And also now you're going to have teams. Some teams are going to play 9 games. Some teams are going to play 8 games. Wisconsin's going to play at most 7 games. You're going to have a hard time at the end of the year figuring out, sorting out, who the Big Ten West champion is.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit about that Wisconsin situation. What about Illinois? They were down to their 4th string quarterback, I believe, against Purdue. Several players out, and Lovie Smith said earlier this week that they're at the minimum at a couple positions. So is it possible the Illini lose a game before this is all said and done as well?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I was actually surprised that they were able to, with the contact tracing and everything, were able to play last week. I was really interested to see how that came about. But, we're getting to the point now where you look around nationally, numbers are increasing. Coaches are it's one thing to keep it's actually a really interesting point Coach Franklin made a couple of weeks ago. Said that, we're asking him about, keeping everything contained within your respective bubbles on campus. And he said he wouldn't disclose which coach he was talking to, but he spoke with the coach that's program recently had a spike in numbers. And the coach told him, well, what we found was it wasn't our players we took on the road with us, but the players who stayed behind. So, they're just it's like herding kittens at this point. There's so many different factors and variables. And I honestly think it's luck at this point. The teams who are getting by are doing so by sheer luck. And before it's all said and done, other teams, I think, will join the ranks of the Wisconsins. And with the Pac-12 starting on Saturday, we got another dynamic to throw into everything. So it'll be very interesting to see how it ends.
Yeah, amazing. Trevor Lawrence, right? He tested positive for COVID. Yeah. He sat out the BC game. Boston College gave him a little bit of a scare. But then, here comes the Notre Dame game, in prime time, and you're not going to have Trevor Lawrence playing. So it's affecting teams. It's affecting marquee individual players as well. And if you're a team like Ohio State or even a team like Indiana that's having a really kind of special season so far, you just want to be extra careful. I mean, I know Tom Allen has talked about that weekly, about the importance of, his guys doing the right thing off the field, and even the coaches too, being careful who they interact with their own families. So it's the other obstacle that all these teams are facing, going forward until the end of December.
Yeah, I know Justin Fields made friends with a French bulldog. Apparently, that's his only companion right now. That's the big story on Saturday. And Nebraska had a scary movie night on Halloween, trying to keep the guys in the facility. So I'm sure that it's something that's a challenge that everybody's facing. Guys, thanks a lot for your time, and I know you're busy. We'll see you again next week.
You all take care.
Thank you.
Thanks again, guys, for joining us. You can follow Elton and his Penn State coverage at EHDC12 on Twitter. You can cover Kevin Brockway and the IU Hoosiers at Kevin Brockway G1. We will be joined again next week by Bill Burt and Clay Horning. In the meantime, you can follow Bill for New England Patriots coverage at Burt Talks Sports. You can follow our national sports columnist, Clay Horning, at Clay Horning. You can follow me in the Indianapolis Colts at GM Bremer. As always, we will take you inside the game every week. We'll see you again next week.